So today we are going to learn how to implement FrameLayout in Android. As you can see from this application, I have two fragments. I have fragment 1 and fragment 2. When I click the first button, it's displaying this is fragment 1. When I click the second button, it's displaying second fragment. From my layout, you can see I have first and I have second one. So the second fragment has a title that is second fragment, but the first one doesn't have, which means it's getting the data to display from the main activity that hosts it. So in this tutorial, we are going to learn how to host different fragment in the same activity. And we're also going to learn how to pass data from the activity to a fragment. In our part 2 of the tutorial, we are going to learn how to pass data back from the fragment to main activity. So guys, stay tuned. So just a walkthrough on what is happening. We have fragment 1 and we have fragment 2. We have main activity, which is hosting our fragments. So within the main activity, I have this switch fragment method, which
it's 12 o'clock.
Which is getting data, that is the parameter, whether to display the first or the second fragment. If it's first, it's going to get the first fragment. If it's second, it's going to get the second fragment. Here you can see arguments, which are used to pass data from the main activity or the host activity to a fragment. Here we have the key and the value. The key should be the same. So as you can see in my first fragment, I have the key as palam1. That's what I'm using from the main activity to pass data to my fragment. Then I'm going to set the fragment arguments to my args. Then I have a variable that is fragment transition, which is support fragment manager.begin transition. Transition.repress. We are going to repress our frame layout. And then we are going to add another parameter that is our selected fragment. Add backtrace, and then we are going to commit. So let's get started with this. I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to select empty. I'm going to call it flagment. I'm going to use Kotlin, then next. So we have an empty project here. Let's learn it and see. So it's now learning. The Gradle is building. Installing the application. There we are. We only have fragment with the hello world. So the first thing that I'm going to do is in my activity, I'm going to change this text view to a frame layout. I'm going to remove this one, and then I'm going to match the whole parent. So I'm going to give it 0 deep, 0 deep. Then I'm going to create a fragment here. We have different type of fragment. We have Google, we have model, we have all these types of fragment, but for this tutorial I'm going to use blank, and this one will be my first one. So as you can see, we have argument 1, we have argument 2. You can add as many as possible. The fragment is getting initialized here. We're getting the data that is passed. This is on create view, and then we have companion object. So in my main activity, I'm going to have a method here. I'm going to call it private fun switch fragment. For now I only have one, so I'm going to have val fragment of type fragment. And for now, it's is equals to null. then I'm going to have fragment is equals to first fragment, then I'm going to have fragment, I'm going to have to initialize var arguments, which is bado. Then I'm going to have arguments. You can pass any data. For this tutorial, I'm just going to leave it, and then I'm going to add all past data to the fragment. So I'm going to have val fragment transition, this is of type fragment transition, which is support fragment manager dot begin transition. Then I'm going fragment transition dot replace al.id.FrameLayout. Remember, here we need to give this one an ID, so I'm going to give it ID, that is frame layout. And then I'm going to have my fragment here. I'm going to add backtrace, so I'm going to have fragment transition dot add backtrace. This is null. And then we have fragment transition dot commit. The first thing that I'm going to try is to switch to this one. So right now, if I run the application, let's see what we have. So the Grado is building. Let's see, this is the previous one. So we don't have anything. It's an empty activity with a fragment, with a frame layout. So I'm going to set fragment. So I'm going to have switch fragment. So, and since we are going to get to the first one, I'm going to change this text. And even this one, I'm going to have relative layout, lab content. Then I'm going to give it ID TV data. The other thing that I'm going to do is to change this text to first fragment, and I'm going to center it in parent. So let's learn this one and see. So the app is learning, installing. There we are, we have our first fragment. So we are going to learn how we can pass data from the host to this fragment. So back to my main activity, and I'm going to pass data. So I'm going to say arguments dot put string and the key that I'm going to use in the value. So my value will be past data, and the key that I'm going to use is the key found on the first fragment, that is param1. Remember guys, you can use any key here as long as you will be able to access it using the same key. So if I want to say private const value, and then I have argument param3, which is equals to data. Then if I want to use this one, I'll just go back to my main activity and change it to data. Then I'm going to have my fragment dot arguments is equal to args back here. So I'm using argument 3, so I'm going to have this one as the third one, and here I'm going to have param3. Remember to change, because if you are using param3, you need argument 3 as this one. So I'm going to have here val loot, and I'm going to return loot. So I'm going to get this ID TV data. So val TV data is equals to loot dot TV data. I'm going to text TV data dot text. It's going to be param3. Let's learn this one again and see what we have. So the app is installing. Let's close this one. So you can see now the text that is getting displayed is parsed data. So if I have multiple fragments, how can I be able to display them on the main or on an activity that is a single activity with a multiple fragment? So I'm going to create a second one. So that is new fragment. Yeah, then I'm going to call it second. Then back to my main activity. So I'm going to add something here. I'm going to call it int which of type int. Then I'm going to have one int which is 1. Then I'm going to show fragment 1. When it's 2, I'm going to show fragment 2. So just copy this one here and here. So this is second fragment. Sure you do an null check pointer here. So are we going to know that we are in second fragment? I'm going to change something here. So I'm going to have relative layout. Is second fragment. And then I'm going to center it. So I'm going to lab content, center in parent, that is true. Then back to my main activity. I'm going to start with 1, but I'm going to have a button that I can use to interchange. So I'm going to have linear layout. I'm going to have it match parent. I'm going to have this one lab content. So I'm going to have start of parent. I'm going to have end of parent. Then I'm going to have sum to inside top of parent. Then I'm going to give it ID of linear layout. Inside the linear layout, let's see, orientation, I'm going to give it horizontal. Then I'm going to have button. I'm going to give it a weight of 1. Height, I'm going to say lab content. Text, I'm going to say first. Then I'm going to give it ID, that is button 1. Then I'm going to copy this one, and this one will be button 2. You can give the padding of 10, and then my frame layout, I'm going to have it bottom of this. So I'm going to have top, bottom of linear layout. Back to my Java, then I'm going to have when button 1 is clicked, set on click listener, and then I'm going to have button 2 dot set on click listener. So if you click button 1, what are we going to do? We are going to switch fragment to 1. If you click button 2, you are going to switch the second fragment. So let's learn this one and see what we have. I'm going to close this one. Let's close. It's now launching. So we have first, this one should be second. Let's change it to second. Learn it again. Storing the application, launching. So we have first and second. So if I click first, pass data, remember we are passing this one. If I click second, we have the second fragment. So you might want to know, if I'm on second fragment and I want to pass data to my main activity or to fragment 1, how can I do that? Stay tuned for part 2 of this tutorial. Thank you for watching, and if you are new, remember to subscribe for more tutorials. For additional help, comment below and I will respond to you.